You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is our What's New episode for this day of July. I am starting off awful. We're going to keep this in because this is live episode.
This
July
is what
25th.
happens when you take a final and then try to do a live stream, Christian.
Exactly. Like his brain cells are gone.
Yeah, they're both chastising me because I before we started this, I did confess that my mind has been all over the place because of school. I just finished my summer semester with a final today. So yeah, that's exactly where my brain is at right now. But we're going to focus on more positive matters. And of course, I say we because it's not just me, Christian Ashley, your host for tonight for Systematic Geekology. But I have two wonderful guests. One of them a former host, and of course, we still love him completely. Brandon Knight, how you doing, Brandon? See if I can't fix that. Nope, can't fix that on my end. So Judy, while we're waiting to hear Brandon's lovely voice, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for a second real quick?
Yeah, sure. What's up, guys? I'm Judy. I am the beloved Joshua's cousin. I get to pop in here and have some fun and talk nerdy things from time to time. So pumped for my first What's New episode, my first live episode. So I will do my best to keep my potty mouth at bay and have some good times.
That's perfect. And we had that talk to earlier as well.
We did.
It's okay. We're going to make this work. And we'll see if we can fix things on Brandon's end real quick. Yeah. Judy, we got her introduction. Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself to anyone who may not know you for some reason, some awful reason why they wouldn't want to know you?
Right.
Well, there's plenty of reasons to not want to know me, but I used to be a host around here, which is what Christian is referring to. I'm Brandon Knight. Used to be an old school host around here. My avatar was the Invisible Man because that is my favorite horror movie. And I'm currently the host and the only host of the My Seminary Life podcast, where I was talking about what I was studying as I was finishing my master's. And now it's just me doing deep dives into subjects that I think are important. You probably may take a seminary class on. Sometimes you might not. And I do swear on occasion, but I will also keep it in check.
And Brandon is about to be done. Just a week or two more of your Bonhoeffer series?
It's going till the end of August. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been going through. Ooh, Judy. Okay. Yeah, we've been going through writings of Dietrich Bonhoeffer this whole summer. Just this past Saturday was my review of his book Life Together, and 2 weeks ago your cousin Josh was on we did a little comparison study on Bonhoeffer and C.S. Lewis because they both had really important things to say to university students during great times of change. So yeah.
So I just want Josh to know, because I'm sure he's listening, that he's fired. Fired. That first, I didn't know you were doing a series on Bonhoeffer. And second, Bonhoeffer and Lewis fired.
Yeah.
I officially am not his cousin anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'd fire him too if he didn't do all the editing for the show. And I'm not going to be the one to pick up the slack.
It's okay.
By the way,
replacement. It's okay.
By the way, isn't Josh the one on Whole Church who is always like, share it with your cousins? No, it's TJ. TJ is the one who's like, make sure you share the show with your cousins.
Yes.
Josh.
Oh, yeah.
And of
that
course,
goes for all of our...
Just to insert himself, Joshua has written to the show. Whoa!
Good.
Is that the host of my favorite seminary podcast and the cousin of my favorite host? Wow!
Don't suck up now. Don't suck up now. You're on my list.
We're off to a wild start. I won't say a bad start because we're never going to have a bad time together here.
No.
I hope not.
Yeah. Not a perfect start. We're going to stick the landing. That's what we're going to do. We're going to start that by doing our lightning round. And I will go ahead and I'll do our first bit of this to give you give you guys some time to think. Once again, sorry, end of semester brain right here, not really working well. Think good. And I'll bring up that image of Ultraman Blazar. Before I get into that, I know you were on the Ultraman episode for Systematic.
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were. Yeah. Okay. So you're a big fan. I'm sure.
I do like Ultraman.
Yeah. Do you have any familiarity? Okay, that's okay. So Ultraman Blazar is out of the 20, 30 some series that are out there that I have watched every single one of them. This is the newest one, and more special to me, it has a dub for the first time in forever. Ultraman X just got a dub recently leading up to this release. And Johnny Youngbush, those of you who are big Power Ranger fans, big anime dubbing fans, he is doing the dubbed voice of our main character here, whose name escapes me because learning new Ultraman character outside of the main Ultraman title himself is kind of hard, especially with 30-some seasons across, 50 years, thereabouts.
30 seasons?
Yes.
And then some.
Jesus have mercy. That's a lot.
So this one, I think, guys, if you don't know anything about it, I mean, it may, for so far, be a good introduction to the concept as a whole. It is not connected, as I have seen so far, to any of the other Ultra series from before this. Some are in their own continuities, some are in alternate universes, stuff like that. So they're probably going to be like the obligatory, like the past Ultraman will show up for maybe an episode or two, like in the middle of the season or something like that, maybe in the finale. But other than that, like Ultraman Blazar has been very fun. I highly recommend it. And let's see. Oh, sorry. We have a note from our friend here. All of his cousins. Dang, I just started with my faves, says Joshua Knoll.
Dang.
I move that we no longer read Josh's comments because I'm
I wonder if there's something we can block him. Let's see. Block user. There's an option. I can totally do it.
Oh, no.
Okay, now don't make him too mad because then he really might not edit things. And I need editing.
There you go. All right. You guys have anything else you want to add for our lightning round? And of course, thank you from the best co-host I have in the revolution against Joshua, Elizabeth Pengalangan Clyde, says, stop distracting him, Josh.
Perfect. I like her already. I don't even know her, but she's on Team Judy. I'm here. Okay, bye. I'm just kidding. I love you. We share the same last name. It's obligatory.
Someone salvage this. Who wants to go next?
Well, I have to say, so I haven't got to watch it yet, but if anyone who listened to the last podcast, I got to hang out with Christian on. I'm a huge Marvel fan. MCU is like my favorite nerdy thing outside of Harry Potter. And I just got done watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2 because I'm getting ready to watch Volume 3. But I have to do so without any interruptions because children are not nice creatures sometimes. And they interrupt me and I don't want to be interrupted. But I'm super pumped to watch the new one. I love Star-Lord. I love the fact that he is literally just a normal guy who's just like made a name for himself, but like leads these Guardians across the galaxy and is always triumphant, which is fun. But I also love that he's kind of an emotional cannon and just blows his lid sometimes. So I'm excited to see the chapter after Gamora is gone. And I don't know. I'm just excited. So anybody who's seen it, I don't want any spoilers. Love you too, Josh. Usually. Send Tiffany my love.
Yes, I'll say 3. I really enjoyed 3. And
Good.
That's all I'll say for your sake.
I'm so excited.
Brandon, anything for you?
I haven't really watched anything very current. I did finally start season 3 of Ultraman from Netflix. But I'm only like 2 episodes in. I would say the thing that's probably the most current that I've been watching is I've actually been watching Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur on Disney Plus. It's a kids Marvel show. Absolutely a kids Marvel show. It's one of those where there's a lot of times where I go, oh yeah, I'm an almost 30-year-old white man from the Midwest. This isn't going to connect with me all the time. But it's pretty good. I've liked it. I don't know a lot about Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, so they can do anything with these characters, and I will just nod my head and say, okay, yeah, sure. There are some points where it's like, I watched a lot of superhero cartoons when I was a kid, and there are some points where the plots are still the same. There's episodes where she's got a substitute teacher at school who's the villain, just like some things just don't change, even if they are trying to make things more inclusive, reach out to different groups who haven't gotten representation previously. It's been good. I've liked it. It's a good one, especially since it's not connected to the MCU at all. It's a good one to just put on, and you don't have to be like laser focus invested the entire time. Like, my kid can play, I can make breakfast, get ready, sit down and watch a few minutes. It's pretty good.
Okay. Because I've read a couple of the old Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur from the 70s comics. It's nothing like out of this world spectacular. It's fine. And of course, Moon Girl is what was typically happening around the time is that, we introduced a female Thor in Jane Foster, and we get Ironheart to follow after Tony Stark and stuff like that. So I wasn't really big on her from what I've read. To be fair to her, though, my introduction to her was a Marvel Zombies spinoff where essentially what happened is she was still around and Devil Dinosaur was gone and she had PTSD. So because of that, she allowed the other Marvel heroes to die. And that's not exactly going to help you like someone in that regard. So, yeah. As far as this kid show is concerned, isn't like the Beyonder supposed to be like the main villain or something like that? I think I saw that somewhere.
The Beyonder is the narrator, and she does battle the Beyonder in an episode. But yeah, he's actually like the narrator who fills in on all the gaps on who the villains are. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. It's pretty fun. It's pretty different with that part.
Do you think of like setting up like a Secret Wars for her or something like that? Like, kind of like what they did in the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s? Or is that just...
I don't know. I don't know. Occasionally they do reference stuff. The Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., symbiote, like it's kind of like a throwaway line, like they'll say something like that. I don't know if they're setting up anything big with this.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's something I have to check out because, like I said, I wasn't really partial to her in other comics besides that first introduction. But yeah, it's fine. If someone can get into that and that's their introduction to Marvel, have at it.
Sure.
Like, I'm all for the people being introduced in various ways than how I was. As long as they get there, they find their character they love.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I love about Marvel is there are so many different storylines, so many diverse characters that I feel like even if you're not like a nerd, like nerdy thing lover like we are, like if you don't enjoy the sci-fi and the mystery of it, you will find something that you like. Like there's something for you to identify with and enjoy watching or enjoy reading. I don't know. I love the Marvel Universe. It's so much fun.
All right. Now I'll go to my second for the lightning round, which is My Adventures with Superman, which I have seen 4 episodes so far. I don't know if the 5th one's released yet or not. And I got to say, I'm really digging it. It's especially since they've said like, hey, this is a reimagining of the concept. We're not trying to like show you Superman as the comics would show you. Like that helps me as someone who's a purist when they change certain things, be like, okay, I can accept that and move on with my life because this is an alternate reality Superman. And I've like our core cast of characters here with Clark and Jimmy and Lois, and they're not starting off as where they're all super reporters. This is them. They're all interns. And it's them like earning the right to be able to go out there and bring the news to people. So you've got Lois as your plucky girl there, Jimmy as you bit of a conspiracy theorist, and Clark is like the sane man in the midst of the class trying to like make sure everyone doesn't get themselves murdered.
Nice.
And I really enjoy it. I don't think, by the looks, none of you have seen it either by this point in time.
Not yet. Is it more adult animation cartoon or?
Well, some of it is airing on Adult Swim. But like,
well, I was about to say Adult Swim usually tells me that that's a kid-free television time.
Yeah. I say outside of maybe I heard some language one point in time and some violence, but like there was plenty of violence in the Superman the animated series. I haven't like seen blood or anything like that. Okay, I can recall.
So it's like nowhere near the Harley Quinn cartoon.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, got it. I love the Harley Quinn cartoon, but I was trying
to.
Yes. But. Yeah. So it's a ton of fun. We just had an episode where like they show Lois is not just an idiot. Like she's like putting the signs together, trying to figure out who Superman is. And it looks like she may have come to the realization. But like that was our cliffhanger for the last episode. So it's resolved somehow, or she gets tricked some way in your classic comics faction. We don't know. I kind of hope she commits to the bit and actually learns it's Clark, because the way they've shipped these two together in this show is some of the dorkiest and most fun they've ever been as a couple in quite some time. And I really enjoy that.
Right. I'll have to check that out. I don't have Max right now, but when I get around to it.
Got it. All right. Anything else you guys want to add to your lightning round?
Not that, again, I'm a mom. I'm a full-time seminary student. I work a full-time job. Like watching TV just is a very rare beauty of a moment. But I've also have tagged, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Solar Opposites.
Yeah.
That was a Hulu thing, wasn't it?
Yes. And so I have had it on my watch list for, I don't want to admit how long. But they're getting ready to come out with a new season next month. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to like binge watch everything. But I have a few friends that are like, you have to watch it. It's so funny. It's just, I said it reminds them of the alien off of American Dad. What's his name?
Roger.
Oh,
yes,
Roger,
yeah. Thank you. Kind of reminds them of like that line of humor of like trying to fit in America. And it's great. So anybody who's seen it, like feel free to give me a comment and encourage me to finally watch these episodes. But I heard it's going to be awesome. New season coming out soon. Totally want to check it out.
Okay, Brandon.
So my wife watches The Bachelor, so I kind of watch it with her. And the new season of The Bachelorette just started a few weeks ago. But before The Bachelorette comes on, there's another game show that comes on, or a reality show called Claim to Fame. And this is, okay, so it's hosted by Kevin and Frankie Jonas. Okay, so Kevin of the Jonas Brothers and the youngest brother who wasn't a part of the band. And on the game show, it's a bunch of people, normal people who are related to celebrities in different ways. So the daughter of, or no, what was it? It was the niece of Tom Hanks was on there. A lot of kids, a lot of grandkids, and the contestants are all trying to figure out the identity of everybody's mystery celebrity person. And it starts off the first night with like 2 truths and a lie, essentially, of my celebrity relative is my dad, who was an athlete and highest award was a NFL championship ring, or, something like that. So it's a lot of fun. We don't do a lot. I know I just said Bachelorette and Bachelor as well, but
I was judging you a little.
Outside of that and Claim to Fame, we don't do a lot of reality shows. That's not usually how we spend a lot of our times. But there's something like fun and almost wholesome about Claim to Fame by reality show standards. And as people at home, you don't know who everybody's celebrity relative is either. So it's kind of this fun of like trying to figure it out along the way. So
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, no lie. I'm really glad that's where we landed because I was really
figured the setup was better.
So hard on Bachelor. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. If I can get on board.
Blame Claire, not him.
I mean, he's the one that
he's just being supportive.
Podcast, not her.
I'm being supportive. She sat down and watched WWE with me willingly, so I sat down to watch Bachelorette with her willingly.
There you go. Part of marriage being a partnership.
Yes.
That's right.
There you go. All right. Well, that's our lightning round, which went on way longer than it normally does. You know what? I don't care because that was fun. And we do whatever we want here when I'm in charge.
All right.
So next up, I'm going to start our main topics of discussion today by going over to good old Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Now, before I go into there and explain the concept, do either of you know what this is?
No, I don't. I was going to ask, is this like the cool, really popular one right now in the anime world? Kind of like a few years ago when everyone was obsessed with My Hero Academia?
Most popular, no, but like definitely up there.
Okay.
And Judy, I'm guessing the answer is no for you as well.
No, now you said My Hero Academia and like Demon Slayer. Like now I've got some reference points because I do have a 12-year-old son who's also a nerd. So those I get. This I'm out.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Anyway.
That's fair. So our basic concept for this series is that, of course, we're in Japan. Imagine that. And there are these entities known as cursed spirits and people who can wield cursed energy. And that is essentially their magic system for the world. And you've got your people using it for good, some people using it for ill, and some people are trying to exercise the spirit, some who are trying to take advantage of them and wreak havoc on humanity and all that. Your standard shonen stuff. Shonen, for those who don't know, it's like young boy you're typically between like 8 to 17, 18 kind of range. Some people narrow that a little bit more. I make it a little wider for the context of this argument. And we have our main character, Yuji, who is just a guy who's a little more capable physically than other people for some strange reason. We found out in the manga. I'm not going to focus too much on that because, I know some people aren't caught up, and this is not manga mustard where we would do that. So there's that. And he eventually ends up finding this sacred artifact, which is the finger of an entity known as Ryomen Sukuna. And Sukuna had multiple arms and multiple fingers. And part of our little MacGuffin grabbing session here is the more fingers you acquire, the more power you have, but also the higher chance the Sukuna can possess you.
Okay, wait, hold on. I just need a moment of clarity. You mean
go for it. Yes, and it doesn't help. Yeah.
So we're just walking around, carrying around a bunch of detached, dead fingers.
Well, some people are. Some people, like Yuji, in the heat of the battle, decide to swallow it to prevent someone from taking advantage of it, which makes things a lot worse for him in that regard.
No.
I'll give him this. It is different.
I'm very
different.
I'm very stressed about this storyline.
So he meets a Jujutsu student, which Jujutsu is another way of saying their magic system. And and his teacher, we have Megami, the student, and Gojo, the mysterious blindfold wearing person. He can actually see, but he keeps it, he looks cooler with the blindfold on, kind of mystique. And two of them, like him, like being given the opportunity to go to school, learn about his newfound powers that he just gained because he swallowed Sukuna's finger. And they're preventing Sukuna from being resurrected, which is one of the goals why some people want to seek the fingers out. Because back in the day, he used to be like the guy who was like leading devastation against humanity and letting cursed spirits be on the rise. And some people want to join up with that and be given roles in that kingdom. Some people want to try and see if they can take over his power for their own, all this mess. And we get at this point in season 2, we're in a flashback to where Gojo is the student and he is with someone that we know is now kind of messed up in that side, but he is on the side of good at this point in time. So it's that I know what happens, obviously, in the manga. We're only so many episodes in, so I'm not going to spoil that for everyone else. But they were supposed to, and I'll get to my question in a second, after I get all this setup out of the way. They're supposed to guard this woman who is known as the Star Vessel, if I remember correctly. And her job is they have this system in place in Jujutsu society for people in the know where they are protected so long as they keep this one guy named Tengen alive. And part of what is done there is they give every now and then a sacrifice to him that keeps their buildings, their schools being protected and gifts them with a little more power than they would normally have. And their job is to protect her. And we just got to the end of the last episode where she was assassinated by a kind of a rogue sorcerer in this extent. So my question to all of you is that can we ever enable a system where we benefit from the loss of a single person?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm still processing a lot.
I have some clarity. Yeah. I have some clarifying questions.
Okay. Yeah, hold on one second. Apparently Josh said something about loving that show. Can't remember which one it was. This was almost 10 minutes ago. Sorry I didn't see that. So good for you for loving that show, Josh.
Did we just unintentionally ignore Josh because
that was I was mid-explanation. I'm starting to get my second intellectual wind for describing something I like.
Perfect. Well done. So proud of you. Strong work. Okay, so clarifying question number 1. Are we talking about like creating a system, enabling a system that regularly benefits from a like consistent, like sacrificial lamb? Or are we talking about like an instance where eliminating one person?
Okay.
Like, so, are we talking situational or are we talking like
habitual?
In this specific situation, this has been done multiple times before. But we could argue, like, is it good enough to be done once? Is it good enough to be done several times? Should it be done at all? So I want to hear what you have to say on that.
Well, something about the habitual, like we have to do this frequently part, that feels like a very hard no for me. This system reminds me a lot of the punchline of Watchmen. When you get around to the end of Watchmen, and I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to spoil a story that's been out since the 80s.
40 years old.
But
if you don't know the end of Watchmen by now, you're not trying.
You're not trying. Or which just got announced at San Diego. They're making an animated film version. You find out at the end.
Worried.
I think I'm just hoping the art looks good. But you find out at the end, Ozymandias has this intergalactic weapon that he is going to use to destroy part of New York in order to bring about world peace, and it seemingly works. And then they flesh that out more in the very well made HBO Watchmen series. So that's where my brain goes, of this like one and done. Can we sacrifice not necessarily one person? In the case of Watchmen, it was like part of New York that blew up. But can we do that one time in order to guarantee the safety of others? So maybe you were in an ethics class. If this is where your head's at.
Yes. Judy, you have anything you want to add before I get into this?
Yeah. So it's funny. So I think I'm whenever I'm piddling around the house, I like to rewatch all of my shows that I really like. So right now I'm in the middle of rewatching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so I think about how like Jia Ying, like for those who don't know, so Sky, one of the main characters, her mom ends up being the leader of this colony of Inhumans, is what they call them. So they, in their DNA is this like power that is waiting to be released. They go through this process, they change, and now suddenly like they come out on the other side with some sort of like superpower, whatever that looks like, not in a traditional sense as we would usually associate a superpower. Like, it was funny when you talk about the blindfold, I was thinking about Gordon, whose like eyes are shut, but like he can see everything, or like covered up with skin now. But, you know, I think about at the end of that season where, spoiler alert for anybody who is anticipating watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like plug your ears. Sky's father ends up killing Sky's mother because she is on the brink of starting a war that will ravage everything they know. It will, you know, create an imbalance between humans and inhumans. It's just a recipe for disaster. And so in that moment, he makes the hard decision. Sky is obviously prepared to make it. You can tell by her actions leading up to the point. But her dad steps in and says, no, let me do it. I want to live. I want to be the one who lives with this. And so when I think about situations like that, see, even my dog agrees. When you think about situations like that in that specific storyline, right? Like we're not going through here like slicing people up as a sacrificial lamb, but are there moments where someone has to make the hard choice that says, this is the core of the threat. This person is the one that's, you know, kind of creating the cohesion between all of the tension that's happening. By eliminating that person, do we break that cohesion? Do we eliminate the threat and protect all the others? Yeah. Do I want to be the person making those calls? No. Could I? Probably not. If it didn't have to do with like my children, I don't know that I can make tough calls like that. So not only do I think it's situational, but I think now we're talking about like fate, destiny, divine intervention, whatever you choose to call it. I think that not only are those moments situational, but there are people who are wired to be able to separate the emotions in that situation, to be able to make the hard decision. I'm with Brandon though. Any habitual sacrifice of a person, or even like, you know, taking out half of New York in the Watchmen. I don't know. I have a hard time with that. Now, if, you know, there were a bunch of really awful people taking over New York and there was just like no better option, again, I'm glad I'm not the general with that power. But, you know, I can understand how some folks can justify those types of decisions in those storylines, in those situations. Just glad it's not me.
True. Fair enough. You both bring up some really great points. And one of those great points is that, Brandon, I was in a biblical ethics class until earlier today. And this is very fascinating to me, that concept, because guess what? We kind of live under the same premise in that there was one person who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Listen, that'll preach.
And without that, there is no hope for salvation. And we can argue all day over what actual salvation is. That's not why we're here. That's another question for a separate episode. But because of that, we are able to be better than ourselves. We're able to repent of our sins, turn to him. go to him instead because he made a sacrifice. However, he made that sacrifice on his own, knowing what was going to happen for the benefit of everyone in the show. And I deliberately withheld this information for right now. Riko, the Star Vessel girl they're going to be sacrificing, thinks she's going to be assimilated into Tengen, the one sorcerer who is providing all these benefits to everyone. But what she doesn't know is that she's been lied to, and she's just going to become part of him and cease to exist, essentially.
That's kind of like here's an old one for you all. It's kind of like in Logan's Run, where they think that they're becoming a part of like whatever celestial being they agree with, but no, they're just basically euthanizing people.
Yes, after a certain age.
After a certain age, yeah. Interesting.
Yes. So I look, and obviously animals to humans, there's not a one-to-one in my opinion. I'm not Shida's greatest advocate here. In the old covenant system we had is multiple times a year, multiple animals had to be sacrificed to cover my sins, my family's sins, the sins of everyone around me. And then we have Jesus doing it once and for all of his own choice. Now, in this specific scenario, not involving, sure, she's a willing sacrifice, but she's being lied to. And she doesn't understand the totality of what she's agreeing to, thinking it is ultimately, you could argue, for everyone's benefit. But at the end of the day, is that worth one young woman who doesn't deserve this to happen to her just to protect other people? I, in that regard, would say, no, we can't ever let a system like this collapse. And if bad things happen as a result of that, I'm okay with that. Even though like untold devastation would be there, like morally and ethically, I cannot ever agree to that comment. I can't remember what it is. It's like, there's a short story I read in college. It's like The Ones on a Road to Omelas or something like that. And the premise is that there's this utopia. And there's a utopia in the city because there is one person in that city who everything is thrown upon them. All the evils of the world and society and the sins are on them. Everyone else can live perfectly fine, but not them. And I can't ever live in a system presuming that, in a sense of salvation, people are going to deny Christ. That's an eventuality. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you can argue, well, I'm benefiting in a system where someone else isn't, based on my views of hell and heaven and stuff like that. But that person also had a choice at the end of the day versus someone this is forced upon them or they're being lied to. So that's where I come into this.
Interesting.
So I think you bring up an interesting point too, because there is a very significant difference between someone being a threat, someone being the cause of the destruction, and having to make the hard choice to say eliminating that threat is the best for the greater good. There's, a whole nother segment here where, like our theological reference to salvation, choosing to take that cup and to sacrifice, that Jesus would take our place so that he would be the Lamb of God. Is a very different situation. But I feel like in your show, and mind you, I'm coming in blind, right? Like I don't know anything about it. But
yes.
Omission is betrayal. If she's not being told, if the narrative is being shaped so that she doesn't really know the outcome of what she's about to face, if she's being lied to and led into this, not realizing what it means for her. That to me is like that's a category that doesn't have any justification. Now, if she so choose, if she was willing, I feel like, what's that cheesy trilly Hunger Games? I volunteer as tribute. Like,
yes.
Whatever.
There's a big difference between that.
Sure. Yeah.
No offense. I did like the books. I wasn't a big fan of the movies, but I did like the books. But you think about those, those storylines, but how often do we see where someone's like, no, I know the risk and I'm going to take it, and so it really does make for a good story, but there's just this very evil, evil tone to it when you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Come right on in. Like, no, it's not cool.
And just to refresh, they're making this sacrifice to prevent a greater evil, right?
Which I get, but I still feel like
No, I agree with you, because now we have the good people committing an evil to prevent evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, two wrongs don't make a right.
I feel like if this has been a habitual thing, right? Like this is something that they're doing every so often, whatever that time frame looks like, that people know it's coming. You know, families are passing these stories down. Like, I don't know. There's got to be a better way than lying to folks and be like, "Oh yeah."
You would hope.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, there's no easy answer to this outside of, I mean, obviously morally, that's where I'm coming from. And a society like this, with this system being broken down, like if this were not to happen, bad things would happen. But at the end of the day, is it worth having that system in place so that most can benefit versus everyone being on equal footing in that regard? And I would say ultimately, no, this is not good, because we're sacrificing people for the wrong reasons of making myself feel good versus protecting other people like I should be doing anyway with my job in this scenario.
Yeah.
So another part of this, not to stay too long on this subject, I'm very grateful for the conversation we had there. It was really well done by everyone, is Gojo and his friend Geto. At this point in time, they're both students. They're protecting this girl. Unfortunately, she dies in the midst of them trying to protect her. But we start with Gojo being kind of the person who's a bit more might makes right. You know, I'm the strongest person in this world, which essentially he is for the most part, because he's got a very broken technique to where he can create infinity between you and him, so you can never actually touch him. And so, of course, cool. you get raised in that situation like, oh, well, I'm just better than you, so therefore I can make the rules. Versus his friend Geto, who at this point in time is a little softer. And it's like, hey, can you see things from their point of view and stuff like that? But due to the circumstances that happen here, their roles kind of reverse. And my question is what is it about tragedy that can sometimes make us learn better than through other means? And I say sometimes because it's a very terrible thing to say. Tragedy is always the greatest teacher.
I feel like as all seminary students, we read lots of books, and I could not for the life of you tell me which book or who wrote it, because there's just too many. But I do remember an illustration that was used in a book about how, you know, when grief comes, because grief is a natural product of tragedy, and many other things, but in this instance, right, if we're talking about tragedy and the lessons that we learn from them, it's that sometimes when the picture is whole, we don't get to see all the detail. But when it breaks and it's time for us to put it back together, suddenly we're paying more attention. We're looking at the details of the piece that we're putting back together. Like when you're looking at the picture of a puzzle, you know, that you go to Walmart, you get a puzzle. My grandma loves to do them, so we get them a lot, and we'll take them over to her. And you're looking at the picture, and you're like, "Oh, that's really pretty." And then you get all 1,000 pieces out on the table, and suddenly now you're looking at the smallest speck of orange to see where it matches to the next piece. And so, in that illustration, to me, it hit home kind of when we're talking about tragedy and our response to tragedy, and what growth can come from it. Because I think that there's a lot of value in that sometimes we get so caught up and, you know, things are going good and we're rolling and we're going through the motions that I think sometimes when we get stopped at a halt because of that tragedy, even though it's painful and even though grief can be incredibly overwhelming, I also think it gives us an opportunity to like really pay attention, to really like see things in a different way and see details maybe we didn't notice before, and recognize people who are supporting us that we didn't even realize were so that we held so dear, or we considered like, you know, their friendship as valuable as we did prior to the tragedy. I mean, we can name lots of examples, but I do think that a different light shines after tragedy comes. And if we allow it, it gives us an opportunity to really see things differently in that light.
Right.
Yeah, so this past Sunday, I was preaching at a church on Genesis 32, which is the famous Jacob wrestles with a spiritual being, supernatural being. It gets very debated. That's a big part of the sermon, is wrestling that part out, but that's pun intended. But that's not where I'm going with this. The big like punchline of the story that I was trying to drive home is, why was Jacob blessed? Was he blessed because he won? Because he kind of did. Even the supernatural being kind of like cheats and pops his hip out of socket, and that's still like he's holding on for dear life. Like, and I I pointed out that that's like a very American understanding of this passage of like, you're blessed because you succeeded. You're blessed because you name it and claim it. Right.
Yeah.
But what we actually see is that Jacob is blessed because he's at the end of himself. He is absolutely desperate and has to cling to this person in order to be blessed, to know that in the morning, Esau is not going to wipe him off the face of this earth.
Right.
And through that story and other places in scripture, I've been just really trying to understand better how we truly grow in humility. It's in that posture of humility that we cling to God, because that is what Christianity is. It's an absolute surrender to Jesus. Like it is admitting I'm not good enough. I can't do this on my own. Bringing it now to this tragedy aspect, although we shouldn't necessarily go looking for tragedy, it just happens in life. I think part of how we get to that point, as you were saying, Judy, about looking at the puzzle piece with the tiny bit of orange to try and make it all fit together, is that moments of tragedy can be very humbling. Grief isn't something that we necessarily want to celebrate, but we still process it. And it's a posture of humility that I think it brings us to, where we have to cling to God. And from that, we can grow through tragedy. Again, understanding that like you shouldn't go looking for it. I have depression. I have anxiety. So I'm not going to wish that upon anybody. But I think that's part of the formula here. I think that's part of how this works, of us growing through tragedy, is the posture of humility that it puts us in.
Well, and I think you really made, no, grief isn't something that we celebrate, but it is something we have to honor.
Yeah.
Grief.
I agree with that.
Grief is just, it's here. It's inevitable. It comes in a lot of different forms, and sometimes we pack it up and we put it aside and we disassociate, we detach from it and we try not to deal with it. But the fact of the matter is that there is grief in life, regardless of what we do. We lost a job, we lose a person, we lose a church. I'm UMC. We're smack dab in the middle of a nasty divorce. And I didn't realize it until, things had kind of settled down, and I'm getting ready to start at a new church. And I just thought, I kind of took like a 4-week sabbatical sort of between former church and this church, because former church is disaffiliating and going their own way. And I'm moving to a church that's staying in the United Methodist Church. And it wasn't until I removed myself that I'm like, man, like this is hard. Like this is much more impactful than I realized until I'd removed myself. But in that grief, I've also found like kind of a refreshing of my love for the United Methodist Church, and that how many people have embraced me and know that I kind of feel stuck in the middle, because I have people that I love on both sides. But I said all that to say, like, I still feel like I have to honor that grief, because that grief is here because of love. It's not grief if I didn't lose something that I cared about or love or appreciate or value. And, and in tragedy, it's tragedy because we lost something we really, really love a lot. And so I think that the magnitude of tragedy kind of matches the magnitude of grief. But if we have, a good support network around us, and we allow ourselves to really be submissive to the ministry of the Spirit, we can allow that, honoring that grief, to lead to healing of the same magnitude. I don't know, just a thought.
It's always nice to just sit back and let other people speak for a bit and hear them, because I think that's what we've really done well tonight. As I really appreciate that. I completely in that regard of grief is something we try to avoid, but it's something we also need to embrace after a certain point in time. Like my grandfather died when I was about 15, and he and I we're the same person sometimes. And losing him was like losing really essentially part of myself. And I had never had anyone, I had people in my family die, but I wasn't close to them before. And the same way that was to him. And I had that point. No one in my life had ever told me, no real man ever doesn't cry. No real man. How do I want to word this? A real man doesn't cry. No one ever said that to me in my life. Not once. My dad will cry when he, something upsets him. My mother will cry when something upsets her. I've always been raised to like, it's okay to do this. But me, I had that sense of I can't do this. I have to be a man and do this. Once again, I don't know where I got that from, but it existed. And I came to that point where I realized I'm not crying over this man's death. And I feel this immense sorrow and I am in the wrong for not crying. And that taught me how to handle grief, how to like love someone even when they're no longer here, how to help other people, which this has been amazing in that sense that I can go to someone else who's lost someone that they love deeply, spouse, friend, family member, what have you, and say, hey, like maybe we don't have a one-to-one the same situation, but I understand losing someone who used to be one of the most important people in your life. And I've been able to use that there, but that's not the only way I've ever learned. To go to the question, like, I mean, what inspired me to learn more about the Bible was me reading through, it was one of the Gospels, and I want to say it was in Luke, and seeing the point of Satan tempting Jesus in the desert and realizing that Satan knew more about scripture than I did. And as a 12-year-old child, that really ticked me off. So like, it wasn't grief that inspired me to learn more about scripture. It was, oh no, my enemy knows more than me. Let me do better in this regard. Like, if that's all I've learned, so you can only really truly learn through grief and tragedy. It's like you live in some comic book world where, we have to have Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy die. And, all these terrible things have to happen. Like I have to learn that I'm a mutant. My entire family is killed by these mutant hating people just for things to come out here. Like we get in the comics and I have this quote. It's from a Daredevil run. It's from one of Mark Waid's. Okay. And he's talking to someone who is allying with the Punisher. And she says, you know what gives me strength? The loss. We're like that way, I imagine. Admit it. Nobody who's a stranger to that particular pain could ever be as driven as us. And Daredevil kind of like looks her in the eye and like throws the staff at her, barely missing her, and says, never. Don't you ever say that to me again. That is a repellent statement. It is a vomitous insult to every cop, every fireman, every soldier alive who steps up to fight for those who can't. I am sorry for your loss, but if you genuinely believe that only the death of a loved one can motivate a human being to take up a cause, then get your pathetic, cynical self out of my way so I can do my job.
Yeah, Mark Waid definitely wrote that. That sounds like him.
And
love that guy.
That hits me.
Yeah,
it's like, because we
really good.
We get to that point sometimes of, oh, well, I can only experience this truly if I've gone through it myself. But no, like I can comfort someone who I've never gone through something like that with them. Like I won't understand completely, mind you, but I can still reach out my hand and say, hey, let's hang out together, or let's give you time to talk and I'll listen.
So that's a really common misconception, I think, for a lot of folks, especially from like a Christian standpoint, that we feel like if someone is experiencing something that we haven't gone through or that we really don't know anything about, like we want to like, oh, well, there's nothing I can really do to comfort them. And then on the other side, we're like, oh, well, I've lost someone too. I know exactly how they feel. Like, no, you probably don't.
Yeah.
Comfort isn't about like being able to identify their emotions or like, it truly is just about being present in the moment and saying like, man, that really sucks a lot. Like, I know that you are hurting. There's nothing I can do to fix it. And I know that, but I'm going to grab some groceries and come cook you dinner. And you're going to go chill out on the couch with a fuzzy blanket that I bring and, watch, queue up Guardians of the Galaxy 3 so we can watch it together and, smack on some food and have some cookies for dessert. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's, we make it far more complicated than it has to be. It's like, no, man, you can just be a cool person. You can just,
Yeah.
Food and fuzzy blankets fix a lot of things, man. I'm just saying.
It's true.
All right. I'm pressed for time, and it's my fault for letting my part of this conversation keep going as long as I wanted it to.
No, I think it's been amazing.
But to continue onto something just as cynical as Jujutsu Kaisen right now, we go to the ultimate amount of cynicism possible in humanity, into Bluey. Now, Brandon, this was...
I'm so glad you did this. I didn't know if you were going to fall through, but I'm so glad.
Brandon, like,
Yeah.
Introduce us. New episodes of Bluey have dropped. Like, walk us through it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know why, but they've added 10 more episodes to season 3. I don't know why these 10 weren't part of the original drop in the first place, but they've just recently added 10 more episodes, plus one of the episodes that was banned in the US got re-edited to be released. So there's 11 new episodes.
Banned? A Bluey episode?
So would you like me to talk about the new episodes or explain the banned situation first?
Both, if we have the time.
Okay, so I'll do the banned really quick because it's actually not as like destructive as it sounds. Basically, because this show is produced in Australia, there is some things that when the show goes international just isn't deemed appropriate by other countries. And for us, they make a lot of bathroom jokes.
Okay.
And they say a lot of words that by our American censorship standards are not appropriate for small children. Like there's one episode where they say the word fart a lot. It got banned in the US, it got re-edited, and now everyone says fluffies.
Okay.
And in particular with this episode that just got released, there's a portion in the episode where Bingo and Bluey are just saying made up words. And it just so happens that one of them was actually a culturally insensitive term in another country. Totally did not mean that on purpose. So they had to take it down and redo the line to just some other made up sounding word. Yeah. There is one episode that will never be released in the United States, I'm confident, because it's called Dad Baby. And in the episode that they're playing, Bandit is pregnant. That's the game they're playing, is that their dad is pregnant with a baby. That is the game that they are playing. It's all made up, folks.
Oh, so
because what a horrible thing.
Forever.
Right?
It's odd. I doubt we will ever have that in the United States unless you're on the Bluey side of TikTok, and then it's like totally up on there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
We're getting into the nitty gritty of the Bluey fandom and its hidden black market here. I love it.
Hidden black market. So there's 10 new episodes. Judy, I'm assuming, do your kids I don't know how old your kids are. So have they seen these yet?
Yes, actually, my daughter's 2.
Okay.
She almost only watches television shows that have dogs in them by her choice, not by design. But Bluey is by far her favorite and mine.
Yes.
And
love this show because there are times when it's just so goofy fun, and there are times where it's amazing storytelling, stuff that I've never seen they covered in small children's programming. A couple of the fun ones, there is an episode called Puppets where sometimes their dad, Bandit, uses a unicorn puppet named Unicorse to teach the kids lessons. Unicorse is the most obnoxious unicorn on the planet. And it helps teach the kids responsibility. It's so funny. And why do I care? But in this episode, Unicorse learns that he's a puppet and basically has an existential crisis. It's so funny, but go watch this. If your Disney Plus feed is anything like mine, your home screen, there's a section that just has all the episodes lined up, so you can easily go find these. This episode has this really great fourth wall break meta moment at the end that you have 10 minutes. These episodes are 10 minutes or less. You have 10 minutes to sit down to get to this really good fourth wall break at the end. But then there's also these episodes that have like these deep moments.
Man,
there's this one. It's called Onesie, which I think this is one of those times where the words don't translate well. Think footy pajamas.
Yeah.
Chili, their mom, Chili, her sister shows up. This is the first time as a viewer you've ever met her sister, Brandy. And it is said in the episode that this is the first time in 4 years that she has been around. And Bingo is like 5. So she was like just born after the last time the sister was around. She's very, I don't want to use the word awkward because that kind of has like a different meaning, but she's very distant, both literally having not been there for 4 years. And also just like with the kids, she's kind of like, no, I should leave. I don't really feel connected. Like I'm making things worse. So Bluey eventually asks her mom privately, like, why does Aunt Brandy want to leave so bad? And why is she never here? And Chili explains to Bluey in a very appropriate way. And you can also pick it up through subtext of other instances going on, that Brandy is infertile and can't have children. And so it's very hard for her to be around Bluey and Bingo, especially because earlier in the episode, Bingo apparently looks just like her when they were kids.
Whoa.
So you have this amazingly heavy, like I have never seen, and it was done so well that like for a child, my kid's one, he doesn't know what's going on. He just knows when the song's on.
Yes.
But for a child to like, that's how it's presented. It's like, it's enough that they know something is heavy, something is wrong. But for a parent, like my wife is in tears.
Yeah.
Talking about this, you know, trying to present this, like this subject that, you know, is, you know, for a lot of adults, just like they carry a lot of shame over this, even though they didn't do anything to necessarily cause this. And there's women who experience this, who just wants to be moms and then find out that they cannot biologically, and they feel like they have to hide this, can't talk about it. And just to have a show that's trying to make that a more normal conversation point, like that's amazing.
Well, and address it in a kid appropriate way. But, you know, I say this all the time. The main reason, I know we're running short on time, the main reason that I love Bluey is because not only is it just fun for my kids to watch, but I swear there are some times where I'm like, yeah, I should say it like that. Like, I feel like it's made me a better parent in ways, you know, because I'm like, what an awesome way to frame that. You know, like as parents, it's hard sometimes to talk to our kids at their level and feel like we're doing a good job of addressing an issue. And, you know, Bluey does that on a regular basis. Plus, their car is messy as hell, just like mine. And it's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, see, I ain't the only one. Fries and crumbs and who knows what.
Yeah, I'll say I haven't watched everything, but I have. My mom watches kids during the day. When I go back home, this is on the screen every now and then. So I know enough about, you know, Bingo and Bluey and Bandit. And I didn't know her mom's name was Chili. So I learned that tonight.
Okay, good.
And it just seems like a very just fun, like low stakes show. Like they're not trying to give a moral lesson at the end of every episode. It's just like the slice of life adventures of these two very young dogs that any kid can look up to and just have fun watching that. And I do appreciate that. And it's like, because every generation is going to have their cartoon that you have for the youngest age, you have for the older than that age, and so on and so forth. And I can definitely see like this is their Barney or Sesame Street or something like that. And I'm all for that.
Yeah. Do we have time for me to plug one more, or do we need to go?
Go for it.
One more. So that was the one that wrecked my wife. This is the one that wrecked me. So it's called Space. And actually, it's one of the ones where Bluey is actually only in it for like 10 seconds. They're at her kindergarten school, and 3 of the boys are playing outer space. And they're trying to decide, are they going to go to Mars or go investigate a black hole? Well, 2 of the boys want to go investigate Mars. The other boy, Mackenzie, he wants to go investigate a black hole. And he's like adamant about it. Like, no, you guys go to Mars. You leave me. You just leave me. Forget about me. I have to go investigate the black hole. Just leave me. And they're like, you're acting weird, but okay. So Mackenzie goes down the imaginary black hole and he's teleported to a memory from his childhood where he thought he was abandoned by his mother at a playground.
Oh.
And he is in this real like Jedi ghost force moment. His school teacher walks up, Calypso, and says to little baby Mackenzie, who thinks that he's been abandoned, you're just turned around. Your mom's right over there. And then he grows up and she addresses him as that age, Mackenzie, and says, you don't have to keep coming back here, referring to like this trauma memory. And at that moment, his 2 friends rush into the black hole and pull him out to save him. And I'm surprised I got through that. I was thinking about that earlier and I started crying and I'm surprised I got through that. And the reason,
No shame, man.
I never was like abandoned at the playground or anything like that. But abandonment issues is like one of those things that like, it's part of like my mental health package of struggles is just feelings of abandonment. Even at almost the age of 30, if I have a night when all of my friends, for whatever reason, happen to cancel all on the same night, I don't hold it against them, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And it's not so much like, oh my gosh, I can see this being like, the metaphor is really cool. The visuals are all really great, but it's that line from the teacher of, you don't have to keep coming back here, of like, you don't have to keep reliving this trauma, forcing it on yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially for children too. That is perfectly put.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's powerful. That'll preach too.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Brandon, for bringing that to counterbalance my darker and edgier stuff for this. I really appreciate that. Even though we did get some darker things to do with Bluey, surprisingly enough, that was very enjoyable. But I need to go to work, so thank you guys for. It's okay, I can show up whenever, but like I do need to get in at some point in time.
Well, your brain cells are also fried from finals, so I say to use that as an excuse.
There you go. So guys, thank you for listening to this episode. Thank our guest hosts here. They did a tremendous job tonight working with my insanity to have this all come together and actually be coherent besides what I could possibly do by myself. And I'm very grateful to them for this. So if you have a chance, just leave us a like, comment on this video as well. This was a lot of fun. If you have a chance, also go to our YouTube page, subscribe there, like us on Facebook, join that group there as well. We have a Patreon too you can go to. But remember, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries podcast network.